Did some farming today, and it's important to connect with the earth and understand the reality of the world that we live in, not the illusions that we may partake in. And we need to then understand what illusions are in our life. Well, today I'm going to be reading an article that we're going to be analyzing together called How We Are Controlled in Time by Arjen van Diepen. And I don't know if I said the name correctly. This was translated from another language. So we're going to try to break it down and understand it. I'm not going to go through a full analysis, but I want you to think about it for yourself. This is an article written for the Liberator 2 news, which is the liberator.us. We're here trying to educate the world about true freedom, the roots to freedom, and how we actually achieve that freedom. Ask yourself these questions on the screen. These questions are very important that most people in politics will never ask you, and it confronts your own belief system. It's very important we prevent another World War II, another democide, the top cause of unnatural death. And this goes unmentioned in the majority of the public. So we're not just going to talk about that illusion, we're going to talk about other illusions that tie in this article. So let's read it. Since truth is in the now and past, you can change the future. The term truth can always be used or referred to. When one gains the ability to perceive what is now and what has happened, it is called consciousness. Now one has the ability to recognize patterns. The more consciousness is developed, the more one sees the truth, which in turn affects your environment, the cloud. The most important qualities you need to create from truth are time and where and what do you give your attention. Commonly in these communities, we talk about time and attention being the two spiritual currencies. What are you paying attention to? How are you spending your time? Are you watching videos like this, or are you watching something that's entertaining, but it's not really going to educate you or challenge your mind or really help find the solutions that could potentially heal or save the world if enough people understand it? And, there's a lot of things people could say that they care about that is really important. So when we talk about the truth, it's particularly that of which society, most of the public, does not have in circulation. Something that's so evident, that's so important, that they are not seeing. Okay, so we definitely want to give that our attention. We definitely want to give it our time. Okay, maybe not everybody wants to give it their time and attention, but we're going to pay attention to the most important things in life. So here is an example of what we believe at this time. At birth, we write a name, a number, and a system that we link to the Gregorian calendar. This is a calendar which is for physical evidence only of birthdays, holidays, but also planning of education, law, salary, career, news, marriage, children, etc. Wow, that's a lot of uses for a calendar. The narrowing of our consciousness already takes place here. We do not even ask questions about other things. We are only concerned with this planning. So in other words, we're looking at this calendar, we're using this calendar every single stinking day. We don't even question, is there other forms of calendars out there? Is this calendar based on any particular system that was invented by any particular, rulers at any time? You look at the name of the month, July, it's like Julius, August, Augustus. These were named after rulers, and isn't that interesting? I think that's quite interesting. Now, we do not even ask questions about other things. We are only concerned with this planning. In essence, spirituality or greater consciousness is out of society because, again, we're so focused on let's just use this calendar. So in other words, this calendar is our dogma that we for ourselves have created or has been forced upon us. Here, the proteins are already being modified so we no longer read our genes completely. So essentially, this is an analogy to say, well, we don't see ourselves. We aren't seeing the honest reality. We're looking at life through this illusion that was given to us. So with this calendar, it could take a toll on our consciousness, body, and thinking. In ancient times, Mayans called this calendar the HAAB, however you say that, HAB. They used it for state accounting or taxes. Tzolk'in calendar is used as a personal calendar and lasts 260 days, namely 13 intentions to create and 20 aspects to create. Astrologically, 12 signs per year, but again, different signs per day, etc. I mean, you can see some of these calendars across the world, they're very complex. Ancient cultures looked at influences from outside our consciousness. What were they looking at? So, in light of that, our brain is the tool for thinking, which literally gives one space to see time, which with this calendar is used to teach us things with physical evidence. If one perceives something that there is no physical evidence of, you perceive it unconsciously and will not be able to wrongly use it. Ego is created by programming or trauma from how or what you want to see yourself. This calendar is held hostage. The pattern can be seen and also is shown to us. As long as we follow it, we walk into a trap that is determined for us. In other words, the protein has already adapted to no longer read your genes in their entirety. No difference from a computer or a robot. So saying there's a programming that's taking place when we use something like a calendar from birth, right? And a calendar may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but if it was created for tax reasons and stuff like that, then you really have to question, maybe it was created for a reason that maybe I'm not a fan of, considering the fact it's arbitrary the amount of money that someone chooses to take from you for the common good, for the greater good. And if you asked yourself those questions earlier in this video, you'd be thinking about, okay, is this really a good idea, taking people's money? I say I like the golden rule, do unto others what I would want done unto me, but it seems like I wouldn't want to be stolen from, so why should I want other people to be stolen from? And if I think my neighbor should be stolen from, am I going to do it myself, or am I going to hire some people with a special uniform and badge and authority to do it for me? Well, that's not really honest, is it? There's a lot of projection and there's a lot of programming going on to say, yeah, that is legitimate, that's okay, and it's for the greater good, it's for whatever we justify for our whim, but we're basically guaranteeing harm. You can say it's for this benefit, that benefit, but what you're doing is you're saying, well, because of possible problems, we need to guarantee a problem, and that is very contradictory. So let's not get our ego in the way of our thinking. So if you can let go of this and surrender everything to your consciousness, you will move out of your mind beyond your thinking, or in other words, to your intuition, your heart or soul. In this, you lose all stress and your anxiety may disappear. We see similar teachings in Stoicism and Taoism. Then you can come out in a state of knowing everything. Your genes can be fully read again in the area you spend the time and attention on. Consciousness is always attached to time in the now, place where you are internally and externally, and what you are looking at and how you look at it. Free will is the choice of what you want to look at. Consciousness is not just us humans, but everything around us, the cloud. So then we learn the language. We are immediately sent to school to learn spelling, spells, spellcasting, some people will call it. And we are taught that language is the most important thing to know, while symbols and images are also very important. For example, if you draw a person with a light above them, you get an idea. When you see this picture in front of you, there is much more action going on than the word idea on paper. This is perceived by your intuition or your genes. Since we often see images, they are sometimes easier to understand than language. For example, when we are tired after a long day of work, we watch television to relax and see a lot of images and symbols that our brain understands even without language. We've come to see this as entertainment, but we can understand it. So we think too much in language, and that can lead us astray. If we started thinking in symbols and communicating with each other in symbols, things would be much easier sometimes. If one can spend months giving us a 1.5-hour presentation in the form of a movie or other program, images being easier to understand, language could become a secondary thing to communicate. Understanding there's different ways to portray the truth, okay? And there's ways that could be more effective, potentially. How many symbols do we get presented in this day and age? Well, the same goes for a curriculum. We have to understand that not all symbols are great. We can use them to our advantage, but they could also be used to program us, right? Our parents copy what they've been taught when it comes to curriculums, and in school we learn to copy what others tell us. The same goes for high school, where we are allowed to develop in our copied reality or illusion. And especially as a child, we are very moldable, so we have to bear that in mind. Children have a great learning ability, and they can be receptors of information, and we can learn a lot from them, but at the same time, they're more vulnerable. So there's good sides and there's downsides, and we need to see that because we still have it within ourselves. You can say many adults still have that inner child, maybe some of the worst parts in it where they want to be arrogant, or maybe they don't want to see certain information. But there's still a playful side, they want to have fun, they want to be entertained, and maybe there's too much of that too. So we need to be able to see both sides of this. Now, should we then have a career with our ambition? We live in the future for recognition. Information is often not truth, only confirmation of what you think you already know. Now, these are mainly tips for yourself. Let's not point the fingers at others necessarily. Let's look at ourselves. Are you doing this? Are you paying attention, giving your time to things that matter? Are you careful of your consciousness? You're not letting your mind take you over. Are you using your intuition? Are you realizing that information has its limits? And so we are so in search of information, but in doing so, we also walk into a trap that is determined for us. If we want to be free, we will learn to read our genes completely with truth. This is what the G stands for in the Freemason symbol, among others. Since we are taught to develop the two mental gender hemispheres separately, which is symbolically reflected in entertainment such as the axe, split coconut, another brick in the wall like Pink Floyd, a heart of stone, Medusa, and the media, etc., we now know what the ego means. And you can see that's just a bunch of examples of the symbolism that is often used for such bigger ideas. And namely, this ego is a blockade between these hemispheres, the male and female part. Often, one of these two is more strongly developed due to trauma, which is female, or ego, which is more male-like. But again, everybody has masculine and feminine within them. So when we begin to understand that our programming is only meant to keep us away from real knowledge, we begin to understand that we have learned nothing about life, only to maintain a system for a few people who keep real knowledge away from us to control us like slaves. That is unless we start to understand more of the symbolism that is used, more of the language that's used, like, for instance, collectivism, individualism. People use the word like we and us to try to make it sound better. Politicians get on stage, they want to tell people what they want to hear, and that makes you want to go along with their plans, especially since you grow up in the world and you think your country is the best and you have to pledge allegiance to the flag. Are we not to question these programmings and how it keeps us away from a natural reality that unites all of humankind past all of the man-made stuff? Because that's what I would like to look at. That's the title of my channel, Nature is the Answer. But this project, the Liberator 2, which I'm also talking for as well, is to really free the world, because how can you express your nature? How could you be creative? How can you be healthy unless you're free? It's so important. Here's a quote from Carl Jung. "It is in the nature of political bodies always to see the evil in the opposite group, just as the individual has an ineradicable tendency to get rid of everything he does not know and does not want to know about himself by foisting it off on somebody else. Nothing has a more diverse and alienating effect upon society than this moral complacency and lack of responsibility, and nothing promotes understanding and rapprochement more than the mutual withdrawal of projections." Thank you very much for watching. If you want to share an article, I'll turn to a video for you. Go to theliberator.us. Just learn more in general, because most people never even heard of statism, voluntarism, the problem and the solution, or even growing food, making your own food forest. You have to see all the amazing events we're doing lately, all the great people involved in this community. And you'll see, hey, these people are outspoken, they're not afraid to speak their minds or speak about anything in the world, because we just want freedom. We want everybody to be free, but we want to get to the root cause of it as well. Thank you very much for watching.